This project will be in my Patreon. Oh, you're here. Welcome to today's special. We're going over one of the most important things in music, and that is compression and dynamics. We're also going to touch base on OTT, one of the most important things when it comes to dubstep production, EDM production. It's used a lot. I'm sure you heard of it. And compression is one of the hardest things to understand. When I went to audio school, this was one of the main subjects that we went over. And the reason it's so confusing is because there's so many aspects to it. It could be utilized in so many different ways. And it's also different per genre as well. So the rules kind of fluctuate as you're going. But we're going to do a lot of visual exercises so you guys can understand what compression does, how to use it, when to use it, and why it's so important. We're also going to be going over bass loops, bass one-shots, drum loops compression, and also compression on a full song, which can be considered mastering. So I'm going to be showing you regular compressors first. So we have this sample, Avant Samples Dubstep 1 bass loop. And to me, what we want to do is make this louder. So usually what we would do is use compression to make it louder. Now, it's best not to just throw it on, but rather understand how it works so that you can use it for different types of sounds. Because when you add it to this bass loop, it will affect it dramatically different than if you add it to this shaker loop. So we're going to go over both and see how to activate it and make it work properly. You can look into Ableton's user manual and look at the compressor and kind of understand what compression is. The compressor, it's going to reduce the gain for signals above the threshold. So if we turn this compressor on, this is the threshold. And if we play the sound, it's going to reduce the gain. It's going to turn it down as we bring this threshold down. Why would we want to turn it down? Well, because we are allowing more room for headroom, which increases dynamics. So headroom is the difference between how loud your sound actually is and basically 0 dB. See this visual sample? If we cut it up, we have a little bit of headroom. You can see a little bit of space and silence. But if we turn the gain up, then we lose the headroom. It's just clipping to the top. So that's essentially what we're talking about here. If we turn down the signal, we gain more headroom. There's more space to work with. Now, usually every compressor will have a make-up gain. So it's going to turn it back up, which will then increase the average volume of the sound. So the overall signal is going to be turned up after we open up the signal for headroom. This gives the signal a higher average level, which results in a sound that's subjectively louder and punchier than the uncompressed signal. This is why I use compression all the time. It makes it louder, punchier, and that's usually what we need in dance music. So let's see how to make this activate. We're going to put this on 0. Ableton will have makeup turned on automatically. So Ableton's already one step ahead, and it's going to turn it up for us as we turn the threshold down. And the average level, once again, will be louder. So let's look at this. You can measure how loud it is here too. We're going to turn it down. Pull the threshold down. You see we start to get louder. We can even turn the ratio up, which gives it more compression. This is like the amount of compression. Attack and release. Attack is for the beginning, how it fades in. Release is for the tail, on how it ends after the sound. You can adjust those too. This is the regular compressor. We also have glue compressor, which is modeling an old 80s bus compressor. This one's usually used for like groups to glue mixes together or to glue drums together. Compression is really good for blending sounds and making them sound cohesive. To make this one work, we turn the threshold down. You'll start to see it starts to activate. You can also hear it turn down, which is a good sign. That means we're compressing. If we keep turning it down, it compresses it a lot. And then we use this makeup to turn it back up. So this compressor is one of my favorites. It's very strong, very powerful. And we're controlling all the frequencies at one time, lows, mids, highs. We can do less compression by turning the threshold back up. And we're always paying attention to how this is moving. I usually like to keep it under 5 for minimum compression, but sometimes I want a lot of compression and I'll keep it up here. Turn the makeup back down. I can find a nice proper level. We're at -6 now. Before. After. Ableton 12 has one of the best compressors called the Multiband Dynamics. That's one of the main ones we're going to be using. Don't forget to follow my Patreon to support me. And these samples that we're using here are from Avant Samples. You can go ahead and look in the description to get some of those sample packs as well. Cool. So first sound is this up top in the bass loops. We're going to check out this sound. We're going to be looking at it visually. So this waveform is important to be looking at. There's 2 different samples here, this one and this one. Now we're going to be looking at the dynamics. So the dynamics means the loud and the quiet sections we pay attention to. And dynamics is basically almost the difference between how loud it is and how quiet it is. Dynamics can be applied to just a single sample like this, or a full loop like this. So when we're thinking of dynamics, you can't just apply it one way. You have to think of it in different ways depending on what you're applying dynamics to. So if you're trying to focus on how this goes from loud to quiet, this has to be processed separately than how this is going to be processed. Same thing with the whole beat. So we're going to be looking at all of these different methods. First things first, let's go ahead and listen to this and see how loud it is off the rip. Coming in about -10 LUFS. If we simply add a multiband dynamics, this will make it louder. So, before, after. This is a huge, noticeable difference. Keep in mind, this multiband dynamics has been slightly modified. Usually it's at 0, but we're turning them up 6 dB to give us some more input signal so that it can work easier. And I actually have saved it like this. This is my default preset, so I'll save that as is. This is what I use most of the time to just get things loud. It's a small, subtle form of compression. OTT is another form of multiband dynamics. It's actually a preset for multiband dynamics. And OTT means over the top, and it's over the top compression. It's basically compression and expansion at its maximum levels. Now, what's compression? What's expansion? Let's go ahead and check out. Let's see what compression and expansion is. So on Ableton's manual, under Multiband Dynamics, you can learn a lot about this very complex, very useful tool. Remember, dynamics is the whole thing that we are focused on here, and we use the compressor to affect our dynamics. Why are we talking about dynamics so much? Well, we can even Google why dynamics is so important in music. So first off, music, just frequencies, resonating vibrations. This is life and the universe. So music's very important when it comes to our soul and how we navigate throughout this world. And then when we get into music, dynamics is one of the most important things to make good quality music and for the music to, sound good. So dynamics is adding interest, emotion, and drama to the music. Imagine the dramatic opening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but without dynamics. What they're talking about is in his Fifth Symphony, he's going from like super quiet to super loud. When it goes from quiet to loud, that's the emotion we're feeling. It's almost like the basis of EDM, right? We go from the breakdown, which is quieter, it starts getting louder in the build-up, boom, drop happens. And then when the drop happens, that's the highest energy, full climax, full emotion. Dynamics is important. if your song was just super loud volume the whole time and then the drop comes, it's the same loudness, it will feel less impactful. So this is one of the main things that we have to remember. The dynamics will affect the energy and emotion of the music, which affects everything in your composition. Compression with Ableton Live's Multiband Dynamics is used in an amazing way because it's a very flexible tool. We can use it for upward compression, downward compression, and we can also use it for upward expansion and downward expansion. So what are these things? So Ableton summarizes here. Downward compression is the most common type of compression that we use. This is the one most people are familiar with. It makes the loud signals quieter. This is affecting dynamics. If the loud signals get quiet, that will affect the dynamics of the sound. Same thing with downward compression. Downward expansion. Downward expansion is also common, and this makes the quiet signals quieter. So those quiet signals get even quieter. Expansion is going to be the opposite of compression. So if you have your compressor, remember those are making loud signals quiet, and then you have your gate, which is expansion, and that's going to make quiet signals quiet. Then we have some uncommon types, which is upward compression and upward expansion. So upward compression and upward expansion is almost the reason why we're using multiband dynamics, because these are uncommon ways to make things loud. This isn't used all the time, but with Ableton, they almost have this secret sauce where we can really get some great dynamic processing with one simple tool. This is why we use it, to make things loud, but also make things clean. And it's very flexible, like I said earlier. So that means we can use it on full, like finished songs for mastering, or we can use it on something small, just like a bass one shot, and everything in between, which includes group processing. So this one audio effect is what we're going to be using and paying attention to understand everything we need to know about compression. This is probably the most complex one. So if you understand this one, everything else will become a lot easier. Now, if we whip out our multiband dynamics here and we put it on 0, you'll see that the signal doesn't change much. So regular, we're turned on. So we basically have to tell Ableton to allow more signal to come into the compressor. So that's why we're turning it up 6 dB so it can activate and start to compress and expand. Now, the way it compresses and expands is all based on these things here. So this is the threshold. This is these little bands here. This is where it activates. So you see, as we play the sound, you'll see the bars move. And then we can move these bars so that they activate at certain points of the signal coming in. So this is the signal. And depending on this, the sound will change. And this is also correspondent to these here. Remember, this is the threshold. And this is the output. These 3 bars are the output signal, and these 3 are the input signal. So we have basically 6 different main controls to affect our sound. And then on top of that, multiband dynamics is really important because it's not just a compressor for all the frequencies at once. It's not lows, mids, and highs all at one time, but rather we're splitting lows, mids, and highs into 3 separate bands. This gives us way more control and basically unlimited possibilities when it comes to our dynamics and getting things loud, quiet, so on. Remember, compression can be used to make things loud, but also it can be used in creative sound design purposes. We make dubstep and riddim and tear out, and our sound and genre is leaning towards sounds that are overly compressed with less dynamics in the drop. And this can create some really unique sounds. So that's why it's used in our genre a lot. That's why we use OTT a lot, because we're taking it over the top and creating new sounds with compression and expansion. Other genres like country or gospel, for example, they wouldn't be using OTT as much. That's a crunchier sound that their genre doesn't really attend to, but anything is possible. You can bend the rules and blend genres whenever you want. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit about the multiband dynamics, let's go ahead and see what's going on here visually. So if we turn that on, that's good, clean volume compared to this. That's why I use this a lot. It's very easy. Now we're going to throw on the OTT and see the difference. So we throw on the OTT. You immediately see it turned everything down. I want you to pay close attention to these. This is the ratio. This is the amount of compression that we're actually giving to the signals here. Over on the regular multiband dynamics, it's only 1/1. So it's very small amounts of compression, but we're taking it very high, up to 4.17 here. And on the output, it's 1 to infinite. So very extreme levels of compression on each input and output signal on each band. First thing we're going to pay attention to, then the output signals are turned up as well. Then to get us to the final level, we actually will turn up this final output knob to get loud enough. So it's turning it down, and then we turn it back up with this output knob. Remember how we were talking about earlier, quiet sounds get loud. We're going to be basically doing every type of compression and expansion with this. So multiband dynamics is giving us all four at the same time. Downward compression, upward compression, downward expansion, upward expansion. So we're doing all these, making the loud signals quiet, making the quiet signals quiet. Then we're making loud signals loud. We're making quiet signals loud. So this is doing it all at once at the extreme level. So visually, you're going to see and hear, we're going to see a difference visually, and then you're going to hear a difference as well. So we want to pay attention to both of those first, and then we can move on. We're going to resample this sound with the OTT playing, and you can see exactly how it looks like compared to this one. Remember, this is regular dynamics. Now, when you hear it, you can hear that the reverb is getting louder and like those quiet sounds are getting louder. You can also visually see that's happening here. So in these tails up top, it's silent. And then down here, it's a loud tail compared to. So the OTT is compressing so heavily that we're turning up these super quiet sounds to something that's worth. That's why OTT is used a lot for, you can make almost something silent, a growl using OTT. You've probably seen this on YouTube before. It's amazing. That's why we use it once again for sound design in riddim and dubstep. It's a key tool going over the top with our compression. But in most cases, you won't want to be going over the top. You want to keep it clean. So that's why we use the multiband dynamics a lot for subtle compression. You'll see here multiband dynamics will be very useful. Cool. Now this second sound, you can tell that this is compressed a lot because of how the waveform looks visually. So you can see the dynamics here. You can see the silent sections, just like quiet. You can see how this goes from kind of loud to quieter based on this fading down. So these are the dynamics that we're looking. See how it's going like in, out. And there's like headroom, there's space available. But here we're kind of hitting the limits and reaching these tip-top points. This is showing us that it's a lot more compressed. You can also measure it to see what's going on. So if we listen to how loud this is, it's -10 LUFS. And if we go here, it's passing 0 LUFS. So you see super compressed sounds will look like this and they'll get a lot louder. That's what you're going to be looking towards. Cool. this sound, we can even turn it down because of how loud it is and compensate. So depending on your input source, you want to use these tools differently. You can't just throw on one of these tools on anything. You have to know exactly what your sound is doing first. Multiband Dynamics and OTT worked very well on this first one, but if we try to add it to this second sample, it would be too much and get way too loud. So we have to refrain from doing that because the sample has already been set up. And remember, like I said earlier, sometimes we want it to be super compressed and sound like it's almost clipping. That is part of the dubstep sound. You combine different combinations of those sounds and create new dynamics in your track. So we have to also look into bass one shots. So if we want to make this louder, throw on that Multiband Dynamics. Now you see here the lows. See how this signal's going all the way to the top? And it sounds like it's distorting too. So you can turn down the input. And you can now start to balance these low frequencies and make it sound good. So you're controlling the dynamics. We're now affecting only the low frequencies now using this knob. Now it's clean. So before, after, and remember we had to fix this low so it didn't sound super distorted. Remember, you can find a fine balance. You could choose wherever you want. So if you kind of like that sound, you can blend a little of that in there. Just like that. Cool. Multiband Dynamics, super clean, very easy. OTT, this will affect it differently. Usually OTT is on 0, so it'll sound like this. It turns it down, and you have to turn it up to 12. Keep in mind you can blend in the dry and wet signal, so full compression or half. You see half sounds a lot cleaner because we're blending the dynamics. So if it's full, we have less dynamics because everything's just super compressed and expanded. We'll resample it to see exactly what this looks like as well after OTT. Oh, had to hit record on. Let's go. Cool. So now when we visually look at this, you'll see the tail got louder as well as the attack. So see how it faded in at the top and now we're not fading in anymore. The way it fades in and fades out, that is dynamics. Like the wubs in Of the Trees songs, for example. If he didn't have it fade in and out, and he didn't have those dynamics, it would not feel the same. So the different genres of dubstep also have different dynamics. So like Tear Out, for example, has less dynamics in their guns. And then psychedelic wubby dubstep like Of the Trees has a lot more dynamics, which creates different types of feelings and emotions. So you want to be aware of that. There's not always a certain way to do things. It's really a creative way to do it. You just have to know how to use these tools so you can go the direction you want to go. You're going to be using compression and multiband dynamics on your drum loops as well. So let's listen to this drum loop. Kick and clap. And a hat. Then some more top loops. If we play them together, it sounds like this. Now, if you add the multiband dynamics with them on 6, which is my usual settings, it will sound like this. So it gets a lot louder. Too loud. So we're going to turn down these input signals this time. It becomes much better. You can even turn down the top loop now and start to blend in the sounds. Now, one of the reasons we compress groups of drums together is to glue them together and make them sound like they blend and fit together. The dynamics almost mesh this way. If this was off, you can kind of hear it almost sounds like the drum loop and the top loop are separate. But when we compress it, they kind of glue together and sound as one, which is a desired sound, usually. So this regular, separated, and then we'll compress it. they kind of like leveled out. Compression is meant to level out the playing field of your signals. For example, if something's super loud and something's super quiet, compression can help level those signals, which can kill dynamics. So that's why Multiband Dynamics uses expansion to kind of do the opposite and re-add dynamics. So very complex, very advanced mixing knowledge here. This is stuff that they taught us in school, but it really took me years of practicing in different ways and different aspects to understand. So this is why we're trying to go over all those aspects now. So this is compression on your drums. If we use OTT, over the top compression, this would be too much. Our dynamics start to get lost. It almost sounds just like one clipped signal. We're losing the dynamics. But then the multiband dynamics and compression is also used in mastering. So like if you were to send all your tracks to a mastering engineer, they would want you to turn all your tracks down to allow for some headroom. They don't want everything to be clipping at 0 because they need some space for these compressors. Such as this beat. This is an old beat I made when I was at school. Right when I got into school, this is before I even understood mixing or mastering. I made this beat. To me, it sounded loud enough, but we'll check the LUFS here, and you'll see that it's actually pretty quiet. So at -12, -11, really we should be in the single digits. If a rapper heard this, he would automatically might think the beat is cool, but he would think it's low energy because the volume he's used to hearing for beats is just much higher, much more energy. So that's an issue. So this, I would send it to the mastering engineer. I'm the mastering engineer, and I'd get the track. Even if he didn't have stems, which gives us more control, we can still use multiband dynamics. So ideally, we would have each vocal, drum, bass separated so we can turn down and compress everything individually. That gives us more control. But since we're in the future and have amazing audio effects like multiband dynamics, you can essentially use this to control the sound. So let's go ahead and see what multiband dynamics does. So intro, turn it on. Very good. So let's look at the LUFS too. -22 in the intro, -19. Turn it on. -12. Cool. -6 now, -7. So that's much louder, but you'll start to hear this compressor is turning up the lows too much. The sub is starting to distort and sound muddy and not clean, staticky. That's a huge problem. So you got to make sure that you control the lows. We can turn this down. You can turn the mids down as well. You see, I'm paying attention to these input signals, how loud it's hitting. I don't want it to hit this top here. They're really up there, so we're going to turn these down. Then you can find the settings that work best. So these are some settings that I found earlier. So lows 4 dB, mids -2 dB. Output on the lows right here, -4. Output 4 dB up here. So we're going to start to do those settings here. So once again, we're at 6 on everything. We're going to turn the lows down a little bit. Then go to the output, turn those lows down too. Trying to get rid of that distortion. Then we get the mids here, turn this down. And then on the output over here, we can turn this up. which is the master output. Maybe add some more mids in here. Now you can see we can move these as well, which is where the output compressor threshold is. So this is allowing more mids to come through. Then we're taking away the mids. You can also turn these up and down. This will change the amount of compression. So see the ratio is changing here. Less compression, more compression. Now the mids are super compressed. Add the dynamics back in there. This is a super powerful tool here. The time relates to the attack and the release here. It kind of scales them all at the same level. Cool, so maybe less compression here. Turn it down. So we're setting at 2.25 ratio compression for our mids. Turn the lows down. So we're just treating each band individually by lows, mids, highs. I could even put it on 50%, duplicate it, have two of them working at the same time. So there's many different ways to use the multiband dynamics. But let's see, before, after, before, after. Maybe those hi-hats a little bit too loud, turn these down, turn the input down, or even output. You can affect these, turn the ratio down or up. The amount of control here is just amazing. Compression, dynamics, expansion are the things that you guys need to be focused on and practicing as much as possible. The last thing I want to show you is how OTT would affect a sound like this. So sometimes when I get on my feedback streams, a lot of people will send me songs that are clipped a lot. It sounds overly compressed, and visually you'll be able to see it. So this is the regular song with dynamics. And then OTT added. This is what it would sound like without dynamics. And then we can look at what it looks like without dynamics as well. So let's go ahead and test these different things here while it's playing. And you can see what the compression is doing. So there's a regular beat, it's recording. Turn on our main. So you're getting louder, things are starting to level out. So you're comparing this to this, basically. And you'll see it's a much bigger difference. See how the sub has gotten up there? We still have some dynamics. That's what we're really looking to see. We'll keep it going. But this time we're going to add the OTT instead. So this is before, and then OTT. So you'll see now, everything's almost the same loudness. We're losing the dynamics. So the difference between loud and quiet here is being lost. So we're losing those important things: interest, emotion, and drama. We're losing the feeling. And if we lose the feeling, we're not connecting to the solo as much. The repeat value is a lot less. People will keep listening to your track if they feel something from it. And dynamics is a great way to make them feel something. We'll keep this going, and you'll see we can go half. Turn down the OTT, you'll start to see gain dynamics. I forgot to mention that if you use this on vocals, it's going to benefit as well. So like a regular vocal will always benefit from some good dynamics compression. And each voice will be different, right? A male's voice will have a lot more lows frequencies. A girl's voice will have a lot high frequencies. That's why we go over this, because you can't just slap on the multiband dynamics on one person's voice and call it a day. You have to analyze their voice by frequency, by tone, by pitch, how loud it is, and then you use your tool, the compressor, accordingly so that you can reach maximum potential. Check it out before.
Now my heart's in a box.
And then we'll add the regular one. Remember, my regular one is set 6 dB up. I recommend that you do the same.
Now my heart.
Before, after.
Now my heart's in a box.
Very nice, very nice. I'm glad you guys came with me on this journey of compression, over the top compression, dynamics. Your music is going to be much better if you keep these important aspects of music production in mind. I will help you with anything you need. I do private 1v1 lessons all the time. Just hit me up. I will help you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to practice your compression. I'll see you later. Peace.